There is another brother called Brian Stewart. He came from Northern Ireland some years ago and settled in South Australia. I have had the joy of working with him a few times as well in tent meetings and other activities. So we try that the Lord will open the doors again so we might see the gospel work going on again in that country. Because of the restriction with the pandemic, I spent a lot of time, especially after the restrictions were lifted, in the local assembly at conference hall. But once again, so we know that we have to go further where others cannot go. I will leave that one like that. I could say a few more things, but just to impress in your mind the need of praying for the assembly work in Australia. In Brisbane, the city where I live, I think it's around 2 million people. There are a few assemblies there. And yeah, so we would like to see them coming together again to work together for the gospel. And I know that there is the intention, there is that desire, but we need to see that happening. And I trust that the Lord will open up the way to do that next year. But in the second place, the outreach into the Spanish-speaking community in Brisbane. Of course, Spanish is my first language. Kylie speaks Spanish very well. There are not many Spanish-speaking people in Brisbane, very, very, very small number of them. But I was looking at the figures of the census, and the highest number of concentration, percentage of Spanish-speaking people in Australia in any area, you can call that like any small area in a state, is in Spring Hill. And Spring Hill is the Conference Hall Assembly's place, where the assembly is. So there means there are not a lot, it's not like a huge community, but especially Colombians. It's a huge number of Colombians there. I will say that Chile is the second country with more people over there. Venezuelans, very few, and a few from Argentina and other countries there. So I'm not going to go back to all the story, how the Spanish-speaking work started there. I just want to mention a brother called Ned Mahad. I don't know if anyone of you heard of him. He was commended from Australia, from Queensland. He went to Bolivia. And he was used by the Lord a tremendous way over there. He saw many souls being saved, assemblies established. He married a lady from Jerusalem, Jewish lady, believer, that was rejected by her family when she got saved. A very strict Orthodox Jewish family. She got saved, she went there to Bolivia, they got married. We went in 2002. We were just married to Brisbane to visit family and so on. And Mr. Mahad and Mrs. Mahad, they were already retired over there because of the health condition and so on. And they said to us, we are praying for a couple might be able to come here and do some work among the Spanish people. And I said to them, well, that would be great. I honestly didn't have any intention of sort of being there one day. I was happy in Venezuela, a very active assembly and involved in many other things over there and so on. But the Lord used his way to bring us here. That's another story that is no time to speak about that today. But yes, I believe that the Lord took us to Australia. And I have to confess here, and there are a few here that I know they got connection with Australia. After being a few months in Australia, I wanted to go back to Venezuela. Sorry, please, don't say anything. I wanted to go back to Venezuela. I didn't get used to the country. One thing is visiting, and another thing is when you are living permanently in another country. Australia is a great country, okay? Don't take me wrong. The believers are great. Everything is fantastic. But I missed so much, everything that I have left behind in Venezuela. And some of you that know a little bit about the work over there, and by the way, I was meant to say this before, we have a tremendous debt with assemblies in Canada and Northern Ireland and other places for the great contribution that places like Vancouver made, sending some of the best couples to serve over there. And for me coming here and see some of the children and grandchildren of missionaries that went to Venezuela, it's a tremendous privilege. So thank you. So, well, I missed that. I wanted to go back. And then we will start to go organizing everything to go back, but the Lord closed the doors. I said, well, we have to stay here. What else? But then something that seems impossible at that moment, to start gospel meetings in Spanish. The assemblies were not very used to work with other communities. It seems impossible. But the Lord opened the way. We were praying for around 4 years for that purpose, until the Lord, in his own time, opened the way to start a gospel meeting in Spanish in the city of Brisbane. It's not huge, it's not big, very small. We started that work the Lord started that work in 2008. That was the 2 Saturdays ago. That's only a small group, of course, over there. There are people, the great majority of them are from Colombia. There is a man from Chile over there at the other end, and so on. But something that has been, thank you, brother. But something that has been an encouragement to us is that over the years we have met so many people. My wife and I, we just cannot remember how many people have come. Some of them come in regularly, some of them come in only once, or people that have been in contact with us for just. But again, when the Lord is there, and when we are trying to follow the Lord in his time, in his own will, the Lord bless the word. And we have seen a few of them being saved, being baptized, and coming into the assembly fellowship at conference hall. Some of them have stayed, some of them have gone later to other places, like happened with the Australians even especially because of the pandemic and so on. But we are grateful for those who are still there, for those who have been saved, and some of them go back to Colombia or go back to any other places. But later I would like to speak to you a little bit more, especially about this brother here. His name is Javier, or Javier in Spanish. His wife, I think, is over here somewhere. Yes, this is not, sorry. No, this one here, sorry. This one here, that's his wife, Paola, or Paula. Paula was a believer. She grew up in a Christian home, not in an assembly, but a Christian home. Well, not a Christian home. Their mother was Christian. The father left them. And later she married Javier as an unsaved man. In disobedience. She recognized that later. That was wrong. And she said to me once, look, even though the Lord saved my husband, and we have a happy Christian marriage now, I will never recommend to anybody to go that way. All the tears and all the suffering that I have, and even until this day. So don't think, he got saved and they are fine now. No, all the suffering that she went through, that was not necessary. But anyhow, this one here, I remember coming to the meeting with her, sitting at the back, looking at the phone all the time, yawning, not paying attention at all. And when I talked to him a few times about the gospel of the Lord, he said, look, I am not interested at all. I don't believe in anything of this stuff. I come here only because she wants me to come. And that's it. I don't want to know anything about God, religion, gospel, nothing at all. And many times when they came, he stayed downstairs with a baby, which is this boy who is here now. Oh, this is Michel. Okay. And then, things happened, okay, but he got saved in a very wonderful way. He got saved. He got saved. His family name is Hennessy. Hennessy. Do you recognize that family name? It's Irish. It's not Colombian. His great-grandfather came from Northern Ireland to Colombia. Imagine that, Irish and Colombian together. Came from Northern Ireland years ago. And then he was a Freemason man. Nothing to do with the gospel. So his father grew up in that environment. The father was the grandson of the great-grandfather that came to Colombia. I'm sorry that I'm trying to move on, don't worry. But you will see the importance of what I'm saying to you right now. And then Javier's father, no knowledge of God at all. The mother, very, very Catholic, Colombians are more devout to Catholicism than Venezuelans. And people that know the countries, they know that very well. And then Javier got saved. And as someone said before, first generation of Christians, what was his desire? I need to take the gospel to my family. I want my family to be saved. And I will tell you a little bit more about that later. So there are so many stories here. So this girl here, he was saved, baptized, she's in Assembly Fellowship now, Olga. She got a disability. She got, I don't remember the name of the disease that she got, but she can't walk properly. She got problem in her hands. Then later she got cancer. And she fought cancer, and she managed to, survive. And this is the father, a man that in Colombia went to some charismatic churches before, and he heard that the daughter was in a church now in Australia, and he came to the Spanish meeting. He's in Australia at the moment, and he said to me, I didn't expect the meeting to be like this. I was expecting, the drums and the jumping and the clapping and rolling on the floor and so on. That was what he saw before. And then he said, wow, but I'm so glad that my daughter is with nice people like you. Well, he is listening to the gospel and so on. But each one of them got a different story. There are a few that didn't come that day, and I could tell you many other stories about them. But just to keep in mind that there is a opening there. We got a meeting every Saturday evening, and we are so glad that the way that the Lord has opened the way. I have to mention something here, especially during the pandemic. We want to keep the meetings going. We used Zoom, like many others, to try to keep the meetings going. But then we started to use a Facebook page for the outreach. And for a Facebook page to work, as any one of you know here on social media, you need to keep updating the information. You need to keep putting things there that are relevant and people keep looking. Well, with that Facebook page, we have been in contact with people in America, in Spain, in Colombia, that they got family in Australia. And they said, I saw your Facebook page. I got a son in Brisbane. Could you please go and visit him? I got a daughter who is in Brisbane. Could you please go and see her? And that has been the way for us to see new people coming to the meeting, because they saw the information. They were churching Christian churches in Spanish in Brisbane, and they came up with our page. And we have had some wonderful opportunities. There was one girl about to commit suicide, a Colombian young girl. No family. She was international student by herself. The mother wrote to us. We were able to spend time with her. She didn't get saved, but at least she didn't commit suicide, and we could help her. And she was very grateful for the mother. One Venezuelan boy over there in a crisis. Well, the Lord has opened the way to do that, and we are being very, very grateful. So YouTube, we got a YouTube channel that, again, has been, don't think that I'm an influencer or anything like that. It's just something very, very, very small. You see, I got very small number of visits there. Some of the other brethren that don't know, influencer is someone who is very active on social media and got a lot of followers, okay? So it's nothing with anything else. Okay, but then I will have to keep moving because otherwise I'm not going to be able to talk about the other things. The visit to South America. So in Australia, we try to visit the local assemblies. We're trying to go back into a series of gospel meetings, conferences, going to the small assemblies. I visit the nursing homes and retirement homes quite often every week to see the elderly who are there. There are another couple of projects, but I think that is not something that I mentioned right now. But anyhow, and the Spanish activity is not only the meeting on Saturday. We try to visit them during the week, to bring them home, to meet them for a coffee, to try to see them outside, to help them with whatever they might need. So they are not only people that we invite to the meeting. They are our friends. They know that they can count on us. When they got a problem with an exam, with something that they need to do, they know that they can call us, and we try to make ourselves. There are brethren here that they know that that's a huge part of the work. And if you don't do that, you cannot expect that people will come to the meeting when you call them to come. So that is something that has been part of there. But I need to mention my third point here, the visit to South America. This is a family from Venezuela. The lady here, she grew up in an assembly, but she was never saved. The parents were in assembly fellowship, those with Venezuelan connection in Moron, Carabobo. married this man here, no Christian at all. They got 2 boys, this boy here and this boy. This boy got married. And because of the crisis, they went to Colombia, like millions of Venezuelans that you know very well. So they went into Colombia. The story is that the boy, the youngest boy, got saved first through Sunday school work. He wanted to go to a church. They took him to one church, didn't like it, and the mother said, why don't we look for a church like the church where I grew up? And then went to the church, to the local assembly. Not another church, but the assembly. And there the boy got saved. And then later, the father got saved. And the girl that grew up in a Christian home wasn't saved. And now my son is saved. Now my husband is saved. Later, the other son got saved and his wife. I said, wow. And the father who was in assembly fellowship, he went away from the Lord. He wasn't in assembly fellowship anymore. And he heard about the son-in-law and the children, the grandchildren getting saved. And he was restored to the Lord. And then finally, she got saved. And all of them are very active in the assembly in Colombia where they are. I met them 3 years ago when I was there in Colombia, when the only one saved was that boy. And over this year, the Lord has saved this family. That boy got saved, Sunday school work. Have you had children from no family, from no Christian assembly, connected to your Sunday school work? Is anyone here like that? Well, look at that, how the Lord used that, and how they are being used there for the work of the Lord. This is in Venezuela, in a place called San Antonio del Táchira, which is just across the border with Colombia. People here that know that area, they know that you just need to walk the bridge to go from Colombia into Venezuela. Venezuela has been in the news a lot recently. I cannot talk to you much about that. I mentioned briefly to one brother before. If you want to talk about that privately, but there's no time here to talk about that. But I just want to say, I walked the bridge to go to this assembly when I was there in Colombia. I haven't seen them for maybe 7 years. And something that surprised me is that, well, not surprised me, but gave me great pleasure, is to hear them saying, we are in the 3rd week of gospel meeting in the house of some believers in Ureña, in another town close to San Antonio del Táchira. And I said, do you have any full-time worker helping you at the moment? He said, no, the local brethren. We are preaching every night. I think there is only one car available in the assembly because of the problem with spare parts, petrol, and so on. And they were walking, whatever means they could, bringing people to the gospel meetings. And they could have 1,000 of excuses for not being there. Problem with electricity, lack of public transport, so many problems. But I said, so are you going to finish this week? No, we're going to keep going. They kept going for 2 months. Gospel meeting, night after night. Sometimes with no power at all. Just with some candles there. But they keep preaching the gospel. And the Lord has blessed, of course, the work. This is in Colombia, in Villa del Rosario. 5 believers that get baptized one evening. I think it's only 2 of them who are, no, 3. The 3 girls on that side, they are from Christian home. This couple is not from a Christian home. They got saved. And they said that that was the 3rd group of people baptized that they have during the pandemic and received into the assembly. So they have received, if I remember correctly, 24 people in assembly fellowship over the last 2 years. But something that I admire of the believers there in Villa del Rosario, the same as the one in San Antonio, they preach, and they preach, and they preach, and they preached. Gospel meetings, gospel meeting. We cannot neglect the gospel meeting. And they keep preaching, and they see people coming along, and they keep going. A brother mentioned that before earlier as well. This is in Bogota. This is Soacha. There are some people here that know what I'm talking about. And then I just want to show you this picture, because this assembly, before the Venezuelan migration, was very small. It was like 14, 16 people in fellowship. With the Venezuelans moving into Colombia, many of the believers moved there, and they started to help the local assembly with gospel meetings, Sunday school work, and the Lord has saved other people. You see the size of the hall there. One of the elders said to me on Sunday morning when I went there after the breaking of bread, half joking and half seriously, he said to me, we pray that not everybody will come up today because we don't have enough seats. We don't have enough space. If everybody shows up at the same time, we just cannot accommodate. And I was there, and I don't know, you see here, this is the end of the hall. So from here is the street. And people walking in front of the hall and standing there. But that hall is not their hall. They are renting. And they have been praying, of course, for the Lord to provide something. But in the meantime, they keep going. There is only one bathroom there. It's for men and female. That one that is on this little side over here. And yes, but they are doing a tremendous work as well. And the Lord has opened many doors in Colombia for the gospel. And that has been connected in most places with the Venezuelan migration. My father-in-law, years ago, he said, I wish that something will happen in Venezuela to send Venezuelan believers here to Colombia. I said, well, not that way, because with that crisis that happened in Venezuela, but that is what happened. There are Venezuelans everywhere in Colombia now, and not only in Colombia, but in other places. Sorry, but I have to tell you about this lady here. This lady here is Paula's mother, Javier's wife. See the one that I said that the husband left her, she got saved, he was in a church, not in an assembly. She was connected with that church, a large group, a large denomination, and not Pentecostal, Baptist. And she was with them, very sound in regard to salvation, clear about the message of the gospel. And before the pandemic, she went to Australia to visit the children. But pandemic happened, and she got stuck in Australia for 2 years. During those 2 years, of course, she came to the Spanish meeting. She doesn't speak any English, but she observed the meeting on Sunday morning. She asked questions about the order of the assembly, the way that we gather, the differences with the place where she came from, and so on. And one day she said to me, look, I have realized that this is the place where I have to be. The saying that our brother said before, our brother Tom Baker, we want you to be completely sure, and you understand what it is, the meaning of coming into assembly fellowship. She waited, and eventually she was received into assembly fellowship. When the restrictions were lifted, she went back to Colombia. And many of us were thinking, well, maybe now she's going to go back to the church, a large church where she was very active. And she said, no, I'm not going back there. And I would like to see a new assembly work started in my hometown, a place called Girardot. And this sister, for several months, has been going around the neighborhood, sharing the gospel, with no one else to help her. The nearest assembly is 1 hour and a half, but she doesn't have a car. She needs to go by public transport. Public transportation is expensive for the average Colombians over there. Sometimes the believers come to help her. As there is a brother called Alan Knott, Australian, has been there, but he lives far away. He has been trying to help as much as he can over there. But this sister, she has a tremendous conviction in regard to what an assembly is. Although it could be very easy for her to go back to where she was, she said, I want to see an assembly work being planted here. And she has been working with that. That is the other daughter. She professed to be saved years ago, but it hasn't been very constant in the things of the Lord, so praying for her. This is Brother Alan Knott. That was, when I went to Colombia, I spent a few days with gospel meetings in that town, Girardot, trying to help her and encourage her. That couple in the middle are Javier's parents. And for the first time, they came to a gospel meeting. And Javier's father, the man that is there, a very intelligent man, he got so many questions about the gospel. So, as I said before, the great-grandfather was a Freemason man. Nothing to do with the gospel. And the wife, very, very Catholic. And last weekend, Brother Alan went to visit them and to spend time with them in the house. So this is a work that is connected to the Spanish meeting in Australia. And now the Lord is opening that door over there for the gospel. But I must move on. This is another place in Colombia. I said to my brother, I want to be very quick, brother. I'm sorry. I'm not going to take more of your time. This is a new assembly that was planted in Australia in April this year. This is in a rural area. That is the kitchen facilities for the sisters there. The first meeting in the conference was at 7 a.m. in the morning. And they have to be there earlier to get breakfast ready and to get everything organized. Okay, Papua New Guinea. Maybe most of you were expecting me to talk more about Papua New Guinea. Sorry that I didn't do that much before. Okay. In my YouTube channel, there is a video of Papua New Guinea. You want to subscribe and like. And okay. It's in English. Okay. All right. Here is in a place called Mukmap. That at the moment is the largest assembly in Papua New Guinea. That work began because this brother here is on this corner here. Whoops, no, he's not in the picture. Oh, well, half of him is there. Okay. So this brother here, Albert, he got saved in another province called Hela. And then he moved to this other province, and he took the gospel with him. And he started to share the gospel, he and his wife, and they saw a number of people being saved, and children work and so on. And the Lord eventually planted an assembly there. They had had a lot of trouble, I will say, especially during the pandemic, because last time that we were there was in 2019. And during these 3 years, we went in June this year, after almost 3 years, we found that some of the believers, again, discouraged, because, so this is an assembly of new believers. No one here can say, my grandfather was in Assembly Fellowship, or my great-grandfather was in Assembly Fellowship. All of them, they are new believers. We baptized most of them. And they were attracted by churches, denominations. And they were very confused. Some of them left. So when we went there this year, we had to try to start like laying the foundations again, not only from the platform, but with individual conversations with them. I don't speak very fluently the local language, but we got, especially Brother Albert, he is our interpreter, so we have to speak in English and then he translates into the native language and to try to help them. But then we saw that there is nothing like being able to provide clear and solid answer from the Word of God when people have questions about why we gather unto the name of the Lord and why we don't mix with other people that don't gather in that way. Again, we know that people are saved, people can be saved anywhere, but I'm so glad when our brother Tom Baker said we need to keep the walls around the assembly, and that is vital. If we start thinking that the assembly is just another church, what are we doing? So we need to be very clear about that. In the will of the Lord, we will try to talk more about that, about the assembly, of course. I know that many of you are familiar with that. This is the original hall that they had over there. Very basic, very simple. This is the new hall, with the help of believers from Australia, was built. This bridge is new, the government bridge. We used to have to go around this river. I'm not going to tell you how. And that inside the hall. They don't have seats. They are not used to them, so they sit on the ground. So you are sitting here on chairs, so that's a tremendous difference for them, but they're. Brother, the brother was saying before about the time here, the clock goes very fast, and I agree with you, brother. But in Papua New Guinea, nobody used clocks or watches. So nobody got this. They don't have clocks in the halls anywhere. Say, how much you want to preach? As much as you want to. What do you see, brother? Imagine they say, well, in Australia, they never said that to me. But they said, the meeting finishes when you finish speaking. And of course, you have to be careful because people can get tired, of course, there. But again, so they are no worried. They don't know anything. Let's see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. or 2 p.m. That means nothing to them. You have to tell them when the sun is coming up, when the sun is halfway through, when the sun is going down. And that's the way that they operate there. They don't know how old they are. Most of them, they don't remember when they were born. Well, I don't remember when I was born, of course. I know because my mother said to me. But I mean, they don't have like a birthday certificate. They believe that they I asked one brother, how old is your father? I said, no, he's very old, very old. He looked very old. He looked very, very old. I said, but how much? Like 50. He said, I said, well, that's not old, please. But anyhow, well, the thing is that it's a different country. I wish that I could have more time to tell you more about them. Don't think about Papua New Guinea about heathen people, that they had never heard the gospel. I can say you with all my heart, there is more knowledge of God and the Bible and the gospel in Papua New Guinea than in Australia. Australia is a heathen country. The latest census said that only 38% of the population call themselves Christians. And the great majority of them, they are just, not real born-again Christians. And agnosticism is, I don't know, it's growing more and more and more. Maybe similar in Canada, I don't know. But yes, so I think that the children, an Australian, white Australian family next door, my children were singing Sunday school chorus and say, what's that? About the Lord Jesus, who is he? So that is Australia. In Papua New Guinea, the great majority of people have heard the gospel. That doesn't mean that they are saved, but they are God-fearing. So that again here. I don't know if you see the name of the place there. KFC. That is Kaiwe Fried Chicken. They said to me, we got a KFC now in this is Hagen, one of the larger towns over there. And I would like to use this one later as an illustration, maybe during the ministry, during the week, they said to me, we're going to go to KFC, and that's the place where we went to. The chicken was nice, but it wasn't KFC. And then I was telling them, well, look, not every place that they got the name of a church is a church. Because here, if someone from KFC, the official KFC, goes there, they can sue them. Because using the logo, the name there, to try to show it. It's like in Venezuela, a couple of years ago, someone got a new store and said Walmart outside with the same logo and so on. So I just wanted to show you that, and maybe I will make more reference of that later. I don't have much more time. I will show you some of the pictures quickly, and I just want to say that's Brother Alf Grant from Brisbane, that's Jeff Walker from Melbourne, and we are having our meal just down there. This is an open-air meeting. People are very God-fearing over there. Another open-air meeting. You can go anywhere and you say, we're going to preach the gospel, and everybody stop whatever they're doing and they listen to the preaching of the gospel. You can go to any public school and talk to the principal. We want to preach the gospel to the student. You say, of course, let's cancel all the classes right now and bring the student to the auditorium and you preach the gospel. I don't know if you can do that in Canada, but in Australia, no way. You cannot do that. So people are God-fearing. They respect the things of God, but again, that doesn't mean that they are saved. And many of them, they keep the traditional practices mixed with Christianity, which is another topic. Well, I don't have time to tell you. That's the way that they cook the special meal. So underneath that mat is lunch. I will tell you later if you want to know. They take all the dirt, the way that they cook it. Some Pacific islands do something similar, if you know a little bit about that. That's an interesting story, but I don't have time. A brother from Melbourne, he took his tent. He didn't want to sleep inside the hut, so he set up his tent there. And I said, Jeff, do you know what is that little house there? It's a gravesite. Are you going to sleep all night next to, the dead body of someone who is just there? So, well, anyhow, that's the way that he slept here. 3 Bibles here, one in Tok Pisin, one in Huli, and one in English. This is one of the brethren there reading his Bible. That's the way that he studied his Bible. No different version in the same language, but in his mother tongue, Huli, the national language, Tok Pisin, and then in English, to try to study his Bible and to prepare himself. And you got all the books that we take to him and so on. So that is a very real encouragement. That's one of the huts where we stayed when we are there. It is Jeff and myself inside the hut sharing a meal, crossing one of the bridges to go to a place called Hiribi. And I think that is Belova, another assembly over there, and that is inside the hall in Belova. That's Mark and his wife with the children. And this is back with the picture that I showed you before. That's all what I'm going to show you. But I don't want to finish without saying something. Just allow me a few minutes to say this, and then Brother Cry will come. The work in Papua New Guinea. There are many opportunities there to preach the gospel. People are willing to hear. But the greatest need is not only the preaching of the gospel, but the teaching of the Word of God. You have to make disciples, teaching them to observe all things. We don't want to see them saved just to go somewhere else. We want to give a testimony unto the Lord. And there are not many at the moment in Australia able to go constantly there. It's just a few of us that can go, and we cannot go very often. We are trying to get back in November in the will of the Lord. But if anyone here would prayerfully consider the possibility of going to Papua New Guinea, it's not a holiday. It's not a holiday. So there are things that need to be considered there. If any, especially brother, at this moment, I don't think that might be very suitable for a sister to go, maybe later, because it's rough to be there, in many senses. But if anyone will consider that, it's not to go for an adventure. It's not to go for something exciting. It's to be there and willing to live with some limitations for a few days, of a couple of weeks, or whatever, and to be willing from the moment that you wake up until the moment that you go to bed to be constantly surrounded by people. The sense of privacy there doesn't exist. If you sit down to eat something, people will come and look at you and say, would you like some? Yes, and you try to offer everything, and they tell the whole thing, and they go. The people are around you all the time. People ask you questions all the time, and they want to see you, and they want to, but you have to love them, and to share with them, and to give the gospel. If anyone would like to prayerfully consider that, please pray. And don't talk to any one of us, especially to me, until you are sure that the Lord will like you. Not to move permanently, that could happen one day, and we'll like that. But even to go for a visit. Just prayerfully consider a visit to Papua New Guinea. Well, thank you very much, brother. Don't take much more of your time. So please go ahead.